Hello, everybody. Welcome to the June 4th OpenCrowbar Community Planning Meeting. This is in our weekly cycle. This is our planning meeting. Next week we do off weeks. We do the design topics. And set up this agenda in our last meeting, I think, with a lot of great material. What I would suggest we do is talk through the stories that are already up, and then the missing pieces we can just fill in and type collaboratively on the Join Me. Oops, I don't know why I lost my name. Does that sound reasonable? And then the other things, we've actually done a lot of work on this Ready State Strengths wiki page, so it'd be worth looking at that and talking about that a little bit. Alternatives review, and what we should also do is talk about the principles content, which I reposted last week, because that might be something that people can review. Talking about the OpenCrowbar community website, we had an action item for reviewing in this defect. Okay. And then something new that came up during the week was the concept of a 100-node install challenge. So, any changes to priority order?
I do not think so.
All right. I talked to. Let's skip over these things. Scott, you did some research. I know this because you and I talked about this on the ICD.
Yeah, so I took a look at effectively online continuous integration servers and services. A couple of the criteria that I made up for myself that we didn't really document was that A, it was an online service, B, that it would support the community. In other words, what I didn't want to do, although I looked at a number of these, the customers or offering CI services, but they were doing them on a per-seat license basis. In order to support the community, I believe that it should probably be open. Otherwise, we would have to purchase an unbeknownst number of seats in order to handle it. It also needed to be able to support the gating concept that we were looking for, and what that basically is prior to code being committed into the mainline or production branch, we would want it tested via the CI system and have the CI system effectively vote as to whether it passed the integration and unit tests prior to us actually merging it in, and then the merge would be done manually by an engineer. So those were kind of the main criteria. I looked at like 10 or 15 of these things. The main deficiency I've seen on these ones that are out there, other than the fact that there's a number of projects that have kind of gone dead, is that they only support a single operating system. And one of the things that we wanted Crowbar to be able to do is, or the CI system to be able to test the integration across a number of operating system platforms. So I think we're effectively going to have to forgo that initially, unless we want to extend one of these tools. The majority of them use Ubuntu, and the online ones in particular either host their own series of servers, basically virtual machines that do the testing, or effectively, use Amazon as a basis in which the party who's using it actually needs to fund those Amazon instances. Anyway, make a long story short, what it looks like is Travis CI appears to be the quickest and easiest one, given the fact that it integrates well with the Git repositories, and it would effectively handle a Ubuntu CI system. It can easily be extended to handle the Erlang unit tests that are built into Crowbar, as well as deploy prerequisites such as the Postgres database that we need and other such items. So I don't know if anybody.
We could conceivably set up Travis on just make that work. It wouldn't be externally accessible is the problem.
Yeah, but I mean, you might as well kick it off and use the online service, right? The main problem with the online services is that you're effectively time sharing with other projects. So it may take 2 minutes to run an integration test, it may take a couple hours, right? You don't know.
You're saying an online Travis service could do the BDD test.
Absolutely. As long as you're okay with the operating system, the target operating system being Ubuntu.
Okay, that makes sense. So they're limited, but not in ways that are problems.
Mm-hmm.
Hey y'all, sorry I'm late.
Hello.
Back there. All right. So okay.
Yes. So
Yeah,
it seems as though it'd be a really low lift for us to integrate that and at least get the basic unit tests and the deployment functions put in place. And then we can work on turning it into a gated function. Unless Victor, you've done some work on this previously. I know that you're late. We were just talking about CI systems, and Travis is the one that after looking at like 15 or 20 of them, that's the one that kind of stood out to me as being the most apt for us to start with in any case.
Yeah, I haven't looked at the CI at all. I've been mostly messing around with resurrecting the chef server support, and I'm down to just one last trademark patent pending.
Yeah. So, in any case, pretty easy to work with. We could probably pull it off in pretty short order. At least having the unit tests that are built into the system run as a initial gate. Additional smoke functions would require some more development, I think, unless we already have those scripted somewhere.
That's sort of where I was thinking we could just doing a BDD test would expose things like the bug that we hit last night or the other day that we fixed last night.
That was pointing things back at the S3 bucket.
It was the Dell repo went away on us. Yeah. So I think it would provide a minimum check. BDD doesn't really do. I know from Victor's perspective, it doesn't really test anything, but it does make sure that we haven't vastly broken the APIs and website in some simple way.
So information on Travis can be found on HTTPS travis-ci.org. And it is a free service to all open source projects and does integrate directly with Git.
travis-ci.org? Okay.
travis-ci.org.
Okay.
I was also thinking of going ahead and spending a couple of grand on a cheap-ass PowerEdge E320 that has the minimum specs we would need to develop against for WSN and RAID. Starting to work along those lines at home.
That'd be cool.
Get that and get one of my old laptops set up as an admin node and be able to drive that plus a few VMs and do some continuous integration at home and make my power bill go insane.
I was literally just repurposing a laptop to do exactly the same thing. So we can probably collaborate on that. It'd be nice to have a couple of different vendors. So
the main extension point for the CI system is it allows you to incorporate anything that'll run on Ubuntu, but effectively scripts for pre and post testing, and effectively so you can cordon that off to whatever it is that you want, and return a 1 or a 0 for success or failure of those tests.
Cool.
And it's pretty simple, quite frankly.
Right. So the idea here is to create a story.
Mm-hmm.
We'll do this. I can do this offline, so we don't take the time to do it. But we're going to create a story for this. Actually, I'll do it like this. Okay. And then we can start tracking that in the story. Good. Okay. I was actually very pleased. This is an aside, but I was very pleased to actually have our first officially opened and then officially closed bug in the with this repo thing. Victor, I'm going to come back to the staff IPv6 since you just joined in. Mike, are you there? I thought I saw you. Mike posted this really nice description of Hadoop readiness bar clamp, which I think we should just pull in.
Vince,
whenever you're
the old Hadoop cookbooks to work.
Yeah, I think that's about. It makes a lot of sense. I'm going to see Mike tomorrow, so I'll touch base with him and see about this and what it would take. One of the things that I'm hoping to do is connect some of this with the Docker work. So the disk mounting stuff, obviously we're not going to do inside Docker, but all the other readiness prep would be interesting to do inside of the Docker containers. I'm going to pre-say that same thing for OpenStack because I think people would like to see us be able to do that.
Yeah, I would prefer, Rob, if we could define an epic for this type of work, and do a decomposition.
Good point. You're right.
Rather than just taking single off shots.
So yeah, so do you think there's a story that we can break down for this, or?
Well, it sounds like when I hear things like I think people would like it. What that makes me think is that there's a higher level epic for like developer access or ease of development or something to that effect that we could actually take a more holistic approach to.
No, there is. I think we're already there. What we haven't done is document it. So let me do it. Let me create a story for that. You're right. So the story in this is document using containers for Barclamp. I'm going to call it Workload development. Okay. Let me take a second to write it. I don't want to take. Let's see. I was going to try and hand off. Yeah, I'll type that later. Okay. So you weren't saying to break the Hadoop readiness down into smaller stories. Although I think these are all really epics, not stories.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't particularly talking just about the Hadoop one, but if there are things that we think would help the community and help additional developers come up to speed, it'd be good to kind of collapse them holistically as opposed to picking around the edges. And that's what I meant by an epic, potentially wrangling all those different functions together.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. So this is the type of thing that I've done videos, blog posts, and documentation for, just to say, all right, if I'm deploying OpenStack or Hadoop and I'm going to use containers, here's the steps, because I think that's exactly what we need. Okay. Sorry, I'm typing. I'm assuming people are watching the screen.
Hey, while you're typing, Mike here, trying to see if anybody can actually hear me.
Yes, now we
can.
can.
Now.
That's better. Good. Sorry about that, guys. I'm in the lobby at the conference, so you know the drill with conference Wi-Fi. This particular conference being run by the city of San Jose when it comes to Wi-Fi, so it adds a whole new dimension to complexity.
They
only support the very latest protocols.
Yeah, I'm at the Hadoop Summit this week. And so while you're typing, Rob, on the Hadoop readiness bar clamp, I wrote it more as traditional requirements than actual user story. But we definitely need feedback. The tricky part here is I'm trying to focus initially on getting those ready for Hadoop-specific roles, but without building in too much Hadoop distro specifics, which is a little tricky. There was a good talk here yesterday from the team at Bloomberg. They've done a number of chef recipes that deploy Hadoop from the pure Apache BigTop distro, or repositories directly without being distro dependent. I'm going to go back and look at some of the things they did. I haven't had a chance to look at their code yet, but we may be able to leverage some of the stuff they've done as well.
So, Mike, if you and I have time when I'm out there, we can walk through some of this and see about what the first steps are.
Yeah, that sounds good. I think the first steps is to start sketching out the bar clamp. We've more or less done this in the past, so there is some existing Dell code that does a lot of this that really needed some refactoring to simplify. It was overly complex when it was split out from the distro-specific stuff, so those are early steps.
And some of that is just defining the roles and then showing how the roles operate. So I think that this document would actually be really helpful from that perspective. But I can write that while you work on the Hadoop thing. We can do it side by side. Good. Okay. Next, hardware WS-man jig. This is like a pretty simple, but it seems like it should be pretty straightforward. It's a matter of carving this out as its own jig. So the idea is that you can use WS-man to interact with RAID BIOS. There is a gem that does WS-man calls, and I'm assuming we can bring that in. And then I documented a couple of the items, like Crowbar can talk to the BMC network directly. So the Crowbar 1 proxy thing should not be needed, which was adding a lot of complexity in some of the IPMI configuration. And then we were assuming out-of-band configuration, default credentials. So I documented some of those things.
You can only do so much out-of-band configuration for that. And I expected that we'd make the I expect that the details of whether or not we're working with WS-man would be hidden behind an interface that would just use in-band or out-of-band configuration for whatever as appropriate.
That was part of Rajiv had put that into his document, and we need to pull that up because he had defined a generic class for this, and that might be the better way to do it. Did you talk to him about that?
I haven't.
I have the design doc. So we can either publish that to the list for comments, which is probably an appropriate thing to do, although the design doc is, in reviewing it, it's more of a, how can we make what Crowbar 1 does better? But it does define a series of, libraries and stuff that would need to be, done in this particular design infrastructure.
Okay, let's publish it to the list and let it go from there. I'd forgotten that we had made that suggestion, Victor. I think you're right.
Yeah, I had a task for that for this week, was to hunt up that doc, which I have. I can publish it to the list. However, people will probably be mad at me for the format because it's actually a PDF, but I can turn it into text.
Okay. That was one of the things that we could consider doing is putting specs into the. I don't want to do this. OpenStack creates these spec documents and then people review them. But
hey, there might be a better way to do it than just chucking it out on the list, right? if we have somewhere to place blueprints and aim towards it, I don't know if we have some sort of online accessible share.
But the pad is, I would throw it to the Etherpad.
Do you want me to create a new Etherpad, or do you want me to put it in this one?
Create a new one.
Okay. I will do that.
What I would suggest we do is, why don't we do this? Create a story. Let me create the story link, and then we'll create pads with story numbers on them.
Okay.
That way there'll be some cross reference. Victor, does that sound reasonable?
Yeah. Although I'll probably find further things to object to as we actually start working on it.
Noted. And alas. I will accept your future objection. Good. Okay. Yeah. I think the first step for either approaches for in-band or out-of-band hardware is just to build the roles that need to do this and sort of make it run the system without doing anything. So create a stub jig. That's always our first step anyway. That might be a fun task for next week. Oh, you know what we can do? So for next week, why don't we do, so we have an agenda item. We'll talk about the hardware jig design at the design meeting. And we can also talk about the using Docker for dev topic. Good.
Do you think it would be possible for someone to pick up the story this week of getting the initial CI integration work done?
Definitely, we can get it started. Okay, you and I can sync on that.
Okay.
I don't know how hard it is to get Travis scripts done, but I imagine it's not that hard.
The documentation I read, it is insanely simple. The main piece is understanding enough of the environment that gets set up and creating some scripts to run our BDD tests as part of the test function.
So I would set as an initial objective that it does nothing but build. Actually, does nothing but vote yes when there's a commit. It doesn't touch our code at all. It just gates. And then we can add complexity from there. Just does the vote, because that's really the key function, right? And then we can add complexity.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we can discuss it. I don't need to tie this off. I think the initial thing would be to get it to actually build, right? Not the gating system, but actually do the build functions in some sort of basic, no-op test. Tying it into a gating function, I think, is going to require some tree manipulation, but we'll have to figure that out.
I actually think that's the harder task.
Yeah.
All right. Yes. Let's see if we can make that happen, because I think that's a really reasonable objective. All right. That brings us to the OpenStack story, and so this one. I tried to cut I think the biggest thing to talk about with this is what the target is, which is that we're trying to drive to make it possible to use the chef upstreams, is the way I wrote this. And I was hoping to have some discussion to make sure that this is reasonable. So my thinking here is that the chef upstreams have a community, and our job is to facilitate that community to make their job easier, right? To attract developers to use Crowbar as the base for the upstream community, rather than try to have us solve a lot of problems in the upstream cookbooks right now. And then, because does that make sense as an objective?
I think that you'll find that there's a number of things that need to be modified in the upstream cookbooks in order for them to work in a tool such as Crowbar, right? There's just the obfuscations that need to be put in place. I think we had identified a number of those over the past couple of months and fixed one of them, at least.
Well, when I talk to people about the cookbooks, we jump really quickly into, I want OpenStack with Neutron, with this, with that, with this configuration, which is we want to drive to that. My hope is that what we want to do is show people in the upstream community that they can use Crowbar to do that, and then we can have it as more of a community thing. That we're not trying to make Neutron work necessarily as our first step, right? I would declare victory if we can deploy what I put in here, but this is open for discussion. If people feel like it's not the right things to declare victory on, then we should discuss that. And actually, I think we need dash the horizon. So what I had said is Nova, NovaNet, Keystone, Glance, Cinder, and Horizon as the most minimal set of OpenStack that I thought was practical. Victor, I suspect you have you would say Neutron with VXLAN instead of NovaNet, but.
Well, it's just if we do NovaNet, then we'll have to resurrect that code.
Oh, I see what you're saying, because we already have Neutron. Okay, that's a good point.
Yeah, or examine the state of what the upstream cookbooks are doing. I don't know if they're doing NovaNet or if they're doing Neutron.
Chris, were you on? Do you remember?
I am not 100% sure. I mean, they definitely had code to deploy Neutron. As far as Nova Network, I don't know. I know in the Crowbar 1 cookbooks, there was actually some work done to remove support for Nova Network, but it wasn't completely done. So as a result, those cookbooks are in a really messed up state in regards to Nova Network support.
Then I would go with Neutron. If we think the upstreams have it and our cookbooks support Neutron, then let's do that. I think definitely it's more valuable to have automation that sets up Neutron.
I don't know if you want to throw database and messaging in there as well.
Yeah,
I mean, they're not part of OpenStack, but they are required.
So yeah, this is really support infrastructure, right? And this is stuff that had been done.
Yeah, so we had gotten the database and messaging and Keystone cookbooks all working, I believe.
This is Gil. Why VXLAN? Is that the default? I thought GRE was.
VXLAN actually performs. And it's still a pure software SDN, so you don't have to monkey with switch stuff to make it work.
All right. I've never played with the VXLAN stuff. All right.
Gil, do you have a preference?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I just, I see VXLAN. I think I need switch support for it. You know what I'm saying?
From everything that I've read, you don't have to have switch. You need switch support for VLANs, but VXLANs they're a protocol, or they're a layer 3 protocol, not a layer 2 protocol, so you don't have to have explicit switch support.
Really?
And it's essentially an L2 over L3 tunneling protocol that is.
Yeah, I know what it is, just like GRE. I mean, I know what it is. I thought you needed switch support, but anyway, I mean that's fine if that's the case. I just, I would have liked to have seen at least something more common like GRE as a starting point. You know what I'm saying? But.
Yeah, I mean the issue that we've encountered with GRE and that a lot of other people have encountered is that it's easy to start with, but it can't scale and it doesn't perform.
Oh no, that's a true statement. There's no doubt. There's no doubt it doesn't perform. It certainly has performed, especially with the NTU size and stuff. You have to fix all that. But all right, I'm okay as long as you don't think it needs switch support. I just thought we needed switch support to have VXLAN. That's all.
Yeah, if it does turn out to require switch support, we'll backtrack.
All right. No, I'm not opposed to it. I'm just asking. So okay.
What about ML2 from that perspective?
ML2.
I'm assuming we're talking about Icehouse, right?
Yeah.
I didn't note that. Good.
I mean, with Neutron, no matter what we're doing, we'd probably be doing it through ML2.
Yep.
Because the Neutron folks are heavily depreciating everything that isn't an ML2 plugin.
I'm making that explicit. Good. I believe that the more explicit we are with this, the easier it will be for people to come in and collaborate. Once let's demonstrate the base, actually just Keystone and database and messaging, with on top of the Docker containers. I think would be enough for people to start trying to help get this running. And then what I had, so we're gonna assume I documented some expectations, controller nodes, right? Obviously this requires the hardware pieces, but I thought it was worth documenting. And from a networking perspective, getting the networks and teams, all that stuff going. Okay. I'm trying to make sure we have some clear technical, and then. This is the story. This is a prereq story that Victor's been working on.
Yeah.
Chef server using encrypted data bags. Cool. I feel like that's. People have something to add in this.
So we're ditching Chef 0.
Good question. Victor?
What's special about Chef 0 versus having an actual Chef server?
I don't know. I mean, in the past there was significant resistance to having a Chef server, so we had said instead of Chef Solo we would use Chef 0. So I'm just kind of curious why we're changing course.
I asked the same question, Chris. It's a reasonable question.
Unlike in the Chef 10 days, the Chef server can actually scale to the sorts of workloads we're expecting to throw at it.
Victor, can I ask this question? Are you planning to convert all of the cookbooks to use Chef or Chef server, or just the OpenStack one?
Well, the OpenStack ones already require a Chef server, or at least the upstream ones do.
Correct.
And we had to do some hackery to make them work with Chef Solo, and from what I understand, upstream rejected that work.
So Chris,
no, that's not right. So we took the upstream cookbooks and encapsulated them in our own cookbooks, and so we never submitted changes to upstream related to encrypted data bags. And so we actually had the encrypted data bag stuff working with Chef Solo, though we did have to install a couple of gems in order to make that work.
Yeah, and I'd rather not maintain that infrastructure if we don't have to, because it is a bit of a pain in the ass. And if we just use our own Chef server, all of that extra hassle goes away.
I think that it's important to acknowledge that Chris, your earlier statement was correct. We did push back on using Chef server in the earlier pass through this, and have since revised that position. You're not crazy. It was the position, and the point I was trying to make is that we're not going back and changing the Crowbar bar clamps to not use Chef Solo. Those run standalone without a Chef server. It's for the Chef cookbooks where they had built in the assumption of the Chef server that it seems to make sense to just use the Chef server. Does that help?
Sure. I don't understand the reasoning. I haven't heard any reasoning yet for the switch, but I'm perfectly fine using Chef Server. I just, I'm fine with that. I just don't understand what the reasoning is. But that's all right.
Yeah, I mean, the reasoning that I had right now is that it's both the upstreams for Ceph and for OpenStack, they basically assume that you're using a Chef server, and it also turned out to be a gigantic pain in the ass to not use a Chef server while using Burkshelf with multiple essential cookbook sources, because Burks files don't compose, so I can't bundle up a single tarball that contains all of our cookbooks without going through major contortion.
There you have the reason.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds like a reason. All right, cool. Thanks.
The thing that changed from the time when you were playing in those cookbooks was that we added the Burkshelf support, and that was actually the Crowbar team's item to do. Right. This is where we sort of left that hanging, right?
Yeah, and Burkshelf makes it a lot easier to not have to maintain our own forks of the upstream cookbooks because we can just pull them in and use them.
All right. Chris, I love it when you ask the questions and push for the rationale, because I think it clarifies things for everybody that happened without getting necessarily discussed as broadly as they should have been. So.
Cool. Yep. No, I'm good. Thanks. Thanks for the explanation.
All right, and then we added this other story about documenting using containers for workload development. So. That one's pretty short and sweet, so I wrote a couple of sentences for that. But I do think this will make it easier for people to develop Hadoop or OpenStack workloads, and so it's a reason to work on. If you're using the upstreams for OpenStack, this should make it faster and easier to do real testing. All right, so that's this. I'm looking at the time. We have 15 minutes to go. I'm going to move this to the bottom because I think that it's the longest item, and I think OpenCrowbar community website, yay! So this is straight out of GitHub's templates. There is now a Crowbar in the Crowbar repos. Here it is. There is now a Crowbar, OpenCrowbar GitHub.io that drives this site. I had a volunteer who started doing a community plan and putting together. I didn't ping him to join the call, but.
Did we actually get someone who knows how to design a website to do our stuff?
I have a resource for that too, but I'm actually more concerned about the content right now. So what I asked is, I'd rather have him on the call before I announce people's names. But so I have somebody who hasn't been active in the community, who has a fresh perspective, who has a lot of community management experience. And a lot of DevOps experience, and they were interested in helping pull together the material to actually build a community website. This is literally just a copy of the one that I put together under the old. So this was our action item from last planning meeting was to fix this, which I did. And then the idea is that this one should actually take you not to the GitHub, which is a little bit intimidating, but take you to the actual community site, which OpenCrowbar should take. The OpenCrowbar.org should take you to the community site instead of here. So I'm trying to engage. Everybody is welcome to help with this if you want. I'm trying to get some content, and the reason I'm bringing it up specifically is that we will take polls in the normal process. But I'm working on that, and that actually goes along the lines of the principles content. So I'm going to put this here. Shoot, I'm not. This is actually website content, effectively, and we'll. Let me actually go to that then. So what I would ask people to do is take some time. Gil, I really appreciated your feedback on this. To go through some of the Etherpads that we have open about helping people understand what Crowbar is. So this Ready State Infrastructure Etherpad, I'm expecting to become part of the docs infrastructure. So in doc, there's this principles text, and I think a lot of this content is really helpful. Actually, is the community website content. And so what I would ask is, if you get a chance, first, if you want to learn more about how we're positioning Crowbar and how we're describing it to the community, these pages are really helpful for that. If you find the formatting not that helpful, I actually did 6 posts about it last week, talking about I just took that content because it was hidden from everybody and reposted it to my blog with a back reference. So it would be very helpful to make edits and changes to the docs here. Polls to docs are very, very welcome. And so we have the ready state strengths. I'm going to move. I plan to move that one into that same area. Any edits on this would be appreciated. I think it's really helpful because ready state is starting to be accepted as a term. We're starting to hear this, a little bit more industry. I think being able to say Crowbar delivers ready state and people understand what that means really helps. The other component with this is the alternatives document, and I keep trying to build this as I go, but it's really helpful for people to understand where Crowbar fits in the in the overall universe spectrum. One of the things that's worth saying is, from the alternatives review, is Judd and I were talking about this concept of just enough orchestration. So I'm working on the very short description of Crowbar. And let's do this. Let's add this as an agenda item for next call. So this is two sentences. Does that make sense? And I believe Judd was going to write a blog post about what just enough orchestration meant. He's on vacation, so not here. But I think the reason why I bring this up and alternatives review at the same time is because the more I've talked to people about this, the more we are sort of fitting in between Razor and Ansible. So Ansible does. They describe themselves as having a simple orchestration, but they're a DSL. They're really a Chef and Puppet competitor, where Crowbar's position is an extension of Chef and Puppet, and so people can understand the comparison with Razor or Cobbler, where we provision stuff, and then they understand that there's an orchestration gap in those tools. So far, I found people very receptive to that, but we need to make sure we have a consistent community message. And I think having a community landing site will make a huge difference, but it will immediately expose documentation issues. And this is where I was with documentation. Where the user guide's missing. It'd be really helpful to have graphics for each section of the user telling people what that page did. That in itself would be a big start. We have some developed tooling that's we have some OSs and things like that aren't accurate. We can clean those up. The principal sections, I did the late binding. I need to add ready state. That's pretty straightforward. I did a whole bunch of there's a deploy guide that I'd love to see somebody walk through, but it would be helpful to have screen snapshots. I'll show you that. And then I have graphics in the principles guide that I used in the blog posts, but didn't link into the principles. So they're actually there. So if you look in that directory, you'd see graphics. And then there's a deployment guide. And I'd gone through and actually walked the steps of doing a deployment with menus and things like that. This actually should end up being split into multiple documents with screen snapshots or something like that to tell people the steps. But all right, the documents the information's all there. We just need to keep running through it, helping people understand, helping people navigate through. Right, you can. We walked and this is updated too. All right, there's a story of to fix this, and that story is almost done once I complete the tests on it. Questions about that? The number one thing that we need is people hanging on docs, just going through them, finding if there's issues, adding to them. I would really encourage people to just do little, if you find little tweaks. I've been working with Decoy, who's my son, and he's been finding little things in the docs and submitting patches and fixing them, which is exactly what we need. All right, so I just did that. Other items before I move on to the 100-node challenge? So I've been talking to a couple of people about what we want to do sort of to show off the capabilities of OpenCrowbar, because we completed the release, we got things going, we did a whole bunch of lab testing on it, and we haven't sort of gotten a in the wild sizable deployment done. We have done a small one, but so what I'd like to do, and I've talked to a couple of people about this, is to actually find a company that is interested in having 100-node, has 100 nodes to do a deployment, and several of us are willing to take vacation time, show up on site, and get Crowbar to do a 100-node deployment as part of the system. Right now, if somebody wanted to do it, we wouldn't have RAID and BIOS capabilities. Our preference would be to say, all right, what's the systems look like? What's the configuration? What's the hardware manufacturer? And the time getting that ready. We can discuss as a group what that is, but then actually do a 100-node deployment and get that sort of that notch checked off on our belt. I think we could do, a smaller deployment would be an interesting thing also, but it's much more, I think the 100-node milestone, considering Crowbar 1's limitations, would be a much better target for us. And it would make it easier for everybody to say, yeah, we'll get on airplanes, we'll go to some site, we'll do a deployment, prove Crowbar in the field, and then come back. How's that sound? Got crickets. Did I lose everybody? Just me. Hello.
We're still here.
Okay.
I mean, 100 nodes, depending on exactly what they want it to do, shouldn't be a problem. I know that I can physically deploy over 100 Docker-based nodes, and the core handles that just fine. The main bottleneck would be how much traffic we want to throw across the admin network while we're pixie booting nodes and deploying operating systems and whatnot.
So we're assuming an incremental pixie boot.
Yeah, I hope. Things probably won't be at all happy if you just flip 100 nodes on auto at the same time.
Right. And I would assume that we would actually get one or two of the systems to test out before we went on site and actually made sure that whatever commit we made on RAID BIOS configuration we put in there.
Yeah. Doing RAID BIOS configuration though, we need to make it work first.
Totally. But if somebody comes to us with Dell gear, then we need to make sure it's Dell gear. If somebody picks Supermicro or Open Compute or something like that, we need to know what that is and be able to scope it. So I'm assuming if RAID BIOS configuration is included in the delivery, then we're going to have time adjustments as a consequence.
Yeah.
But the main thing I want to be able to do is go out and offer the challenge, because I think it's the type of thing that'll attract some attention, and I really want to see us field validate 100 nodes. It's that bogey that Crowbar 1 always chased, right? All right, I'm gonna craft something up on the list as a tentative proposal, and we'll sort of walk it through with that. But I wanted to bring it up here first. I thought that was the right place. Cool. This has been. We didn't do the Ceph one. We'll do that one later.
What specifics are you asking for the Ceph one?
Just a description of what as an operator, I expect this to happen, what version. Same stuff we did for OpenStack. What version, what layout, how it would be networked, stuff like that.
Okay, that sort of thing. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I can hack something up, but I probably won't actually hack anything up until I actually have the Chef server back up and running, because that's also a prerequisite for Ceph.
That's cool. I think we've got a lot of stories to populate into the backlog right now, more than we have velocity. So.
And I have a hard stop right about now.
Thank you all for participating. It's been a really productive meeting.
Yes. All right.
Ciao.
Talk to y'all more later.
Bye.